Hello, everyone. Thank you for checking out this special episode of Really Dicey. This is Manny, and I'm here with.
I'm Scott Harris King, creator of the comic book Quests, among others.
Yes, and today that's what we're going to talk about. Quest number two. And viewers, this is the the first issue of Quest. There's multiple covers, and the reason why I chose this cover is because this one has a special adventure inside that you and Matt Timmons, who also contributes to Really Dicey, put together.
So, I've been doing comics now for almost 5 years, and Quest is a story that I've wanted to tell for a long time. It's basically an epic fantasy series. It's about a ragtag party of adventurers who are thrown together by fate and charged with an impossible quest to save their doomed world. So, it's all the good stuff in fantasy. It's all the stuff that I like in fantasy, and particularly in Dungeons and Dragons. I started playing Dungeons and Dragons in 1980, and it's really shaped sort of how I started playing D&D kind of before I was really introduced to other fantasy stuff. So it's really sort of foundational to how I view fantasy storytelling. And so, I've always wanted to do a fantasy comic, and I have these characters. Some of them are old D&D characters, and I finally, earlier this year, put out Quest number one. And now, I've got issue two currently live on Kickstarter until November 13. And it's basically what I wanted to feel like is like a comic book where you're reading like a Dungeons and Dragons campaign. So there's going to be multiple adventures. We're going to see the characters progress. You'll see the characters actually kind of level up. They'll get stronger. They'll learn new abilities, new spells. They'll get new equipment, like more powerful equipment and stuff. And they'll face more and more difficult challenges of different dungeons and modules and that we'll go through. We could talk a little bit more about that. But when I'm writing the stories, I think about, okay, this issue or this two-part story is like they're going through this kind of module or whatever, and that's what I want it to feel. I want it to feel like you're reading a cool D&D campaign.
Mm. Could you share with us some of the characters that are in your story?
Sure. The main character is a paladin named Vess, and she's a new paladin. So in the world of Quest, paladins have a specific sort of role in the society. They're sort of outside the law, and they operate mostly out on the frontier, on the borderlands between civilization and then the wildlands, where it used to be civilized countries, but were all destroyed by the invading armies during a war a couple hundred years ago. And so they sort of patrol that, kind of like Texas Rangers. They patrol the area and help adventurers and settlers in need that are, being attacked by orcs or whatever. And in the first issue, she comes to the rescue of a group of travelers who get attacked by gnolls, and sort of falls in with them to protect them on their trip. And then some stuff happens, and they end up sort of being charged with this quest to go to this place. It's 1,000 miles inside the Lost Lands, that are all monsters and dungeons and ruins and stuff. And so in this issue, in the second issue, we start to get her backstory a little bit, and we start to see why she came out here to begin with. As I mentioned, she's a new paladin, and new paladins only become paladins when one of the previous paladins dies. And so she's been sent by the church to find out what happened to her predecessor. So we start to get into that here in the second issue. We get into that sort of side quest, if you will, where we learn about the character's backstory, and some stuff happens there. And then the other characters, there's quite a few characters in the first issue, but they don't all make it to the second issue. It's kind of like in Dungeon Crawl Classics, where you make all the 0 level characters and you go on an adventure, and most of them die. And then if you make it out of the adventure, you become level 1. That's kind of what the first issue is like. So we start with like 11 characters at the beginning of the first issue. There's only 5 left at the end of the first issue. So the other characters that are the continuation issue 2, are there's three dwarves who have gone on. They're on their own quest that Vess becomes a part of. Um, and they don't actually know too much about what they're doing. They were sent on this quest by the Dwarven King without really knowing what they're doing. And so there's a monk named Day. Day Ironhammer is a monk, and then there's a ranger named Hugin. And we do get into a little bit about why there are dwarven rangers because that's a little unusual. In fantasy, dwarves are usually down in the caves, but we get into a little bit of that. And then there's a geomancer named Ashra who she can control the earth and stones and has different abilities, so she can like read uh memories from the stone. She can sort of talk to the earth and stuff like that, and has different magic powers there. And then the fifth member of the party here in issue two is Maniac. Maniac Op is a elven bard, and he's sort of gone out to explore these lost lands because he's trying to learn all the lost stories and reclaim the lost histories of all the different civilizations that were destroyed during the war, and sort of find out what happened to those people and reclaim that history. So those are the sort of the core party members when we're at the beginning of issue two.
Great story so far. I enjoyed the first issue, and I can't wait for the second one, which is out on Kickstarter right now. I'll put a link for it below. Are you doing the art for this as well? I know you did a lot for Crime Busters.
No, I mean, well, I'm doing some of the covers. So basically, um, when I first started doing comics a few years ago with my series of Crime Busters, I did everything. And I enjoy it, but I draw very slowly. And so I really wanted to be able to tell stories faster, get the comics out faster. And I realized, particularly because I wanted to do Quest, that Crime Busters was taking me so long to draw that I didn't have time to do anything else. I couldn't do Quest because it was taking too long. So I decided to just focus on the writing. I hired an artist to do Crime Busters for me, and that allowed me to get the time to then bring in other artists to do quests. Because if I'm just writing, I don't just write, but if I'm focused mainly on writing, I can do a lot more and get a lot more done. So with Quest, the first issue, the interior art is done by an artist by the name of Marcos Lima. And then there's a flatter named Shane. And what a flatter is they come in, they do just the basic background colors or colors for everything, but just flat. So no dimension or lighting effects or anything or shading, but just like, um, and then once they're done with that, then I go in, I do the finished colors, and then I do the lettering and I do like the graphic design as well. So part of the lettering is like the sound effects. I'll do the logos on the cover and things like that. Um, and then, obviously all the publishing stuff. So the Kickstarter, the printers, all that stuff I do as well. So I do a little bit with the art. I mean, the coloring, I have very specific, I'm actually colorblind. I'm red-green colorblind. And so for me, for the colors to really work, I need them higher contrast. So I have a specific sort of color sensibility. So a lot of times when I get the stuff from my flatter, I'll change the colors because I want this to be brighter or this to be darker or whatever. And then I add all the lighting effects. So it does take quite a bit. I originally did Crime Busters in black and white, as you know, and then I've shifted to color. Um, and so the color really does add quite a bit, I think, to the story, particularly with Quest. Now, having said that, I also want to embrace the feel of the old D&D modules. So, like, I have the back covers are in black and white, and those are done by another different artist named Raleigh Marshadesh, and he has a style that's very reminiscent of like the old, like illustrations that you'd have in the D&D books from the late 70s and early 80s. And then I also draw some of the variant covers. So I like to have a variety of different covers. And so people can sort of pick and choose, but also it allows me, it's just fun for me to sort of pay tribute to like the different inspirations that I have. So the one you showed isn't the regular cover, it's for the tabletop RPG edition. I do all of those, they look like D&D modules. I have another one where I take the artwork from the regular cover, but I do it, I kind of shrink it down a little bit and then do a book cover design so it looks like the Endless Quest books that TSR put out in the early 80s. I've got a series of those covers and a series of covers that looks like the Conan the Barbarian covers that Marvel put out in the 1970s. So I do all the designs so it looks like the 70s comics and stuff. So I have a lot of fun doing that. I draw a lot of those covers. So um, Now the second issue, I have a new artist. His name is Rock Alves. He'll be doing issues 2 and 3. It's hard to find an artist to do every issue just because everybody's freelance basically. And when I was ready to work on issue 2, Marcos, who did issue 1, wasn't available. He was working on it first. He had a job for someone else. Um, he will be back. He's actually just starting work on issue 5 for me. So I've been really getting ahead. So like next year we'll be having quests issues 3, 4, and 5 will all definitely be out next year. I already have all the art for issue 3 is done. And then there's another artist who's coming in just for issue 4 who has a bit more of a cartoony style. Issue 4 is sort of we meet new party members. There's the classic like, they go to the tavern and they encounter other party members sort of thing. And her name is Lisa, so she'll be doing issue 4. And then Marcos will be back with issue 5, and hopefully going forward if we can match the schedules. But there's a lot of juggling of artists, but it's also cool to see the different artists have the different interpretations of the characters, and I have other artists that do different variant covers, so you can, it's really creatively fulfilling to see all of that.
Hmm. Let's talk about the special modules you have for Quest 1 and Quest 2. They're not in every issue. You have to specifically select this as a reward in your Kickstarter. I love it when comic books and modules kind of interconnect because, I don't know, you get to read the story, you get to feel the vibe, and then you see the module, and then you get to express that vibe with your friends. So yeah, what can you tell us about the
Yeah,
modules?
I mean that's exactly what I wanted to do because I was sort of because the story is inspired by D&D and by D&D characters. It seemed natural to me, particularly when I started thinking about doing the cover as the module. I thought, well, why don't we do sort of a module and have some game supplement materials in the comics so you can, when you finish reading the comic, you can then play the story yourself in your own home game and make it sort of an interactive experience for people. So what I did was, I reached out to Matt, to Matthew Timmons, and he's helping me with this. And so every issue we're going to have a supplement in the back if you get the special edition. Now, calling it the Tabletop RPG edition. It has 8, at least 8. The first issue is 9 bonus pages of gaming material in addition to the comic. So the regular editions of the comic, they're 28 pages. So the first issue is 24 pages of stories, and then it had 4 pages of like bonus pinups and character stuff. The new issues, the story is actually 25 pages, but of story. But either way, so you get 28 in the regular edition. You'll get another 8 pages of the gaming material. And what I want to do is in every issue we're going to expand the whole world of Quest. So in addition to the mini module where you can play through an adventure with the scenario and the setting of the story, we're also going to have rules for the classes that are specific to this world. So as I talked about with the paladins work kind of like Texas Rangers in this world, but they're outside the law, so they have a powerful sort of role. Because of that, they're limited in the world. There can only be 50 paladins, and they have certain like holy symbols. There's all these different rules. So in the first issue, we have the rules for paladins, so you can play And I should say we use the old school adventures gaming system. So of course, if you have the old school essentials, player's handbook, there's rules for paladin. But in my module in the comic, it has the rules for paladin in this world, and we're doing that in every issue. So the second issue are going to be the rules for a type of bard that I call the lore master bard. So our character Maniacop is a lore master bard. So he's a storyteller more than like a musician. And so the way he works is like traditionally in the D&D type of games, you have a bard and they're in combat and they bust out their lute and they're singing a song to inspire the people. But that's not how bard works in this world. um uh Mechanically it's very similar because he can give bonuses to his teammates. um but the way it works is he just knows about the monster, so he sort of coordinates the battle. So Bard would be like, oh, you know watch out, this thing here has claws in the back that can rake you if you get within too close to it. And so that could give your party members a bonus armor class because they know what to watch out for. Or the bard could say, oh, this thing is it's got a weak spot here, and it's also weak to fire, and I learned X, Y, and Z, so watch out for that. And then the party members might have a bonus to attack because they know where the weak points are. So it's less about I love bard. Bard's maybe my favorite class to play in a D&D game. But I've always found it goofy to just to like I had a bard whose main instrument was a harmonica, so we'd be fighting and I'd be like like it's silly. So I wanted to play with a bard, but like have it just fit more in with the style story that I'm telling. So every issue will have rules for that. Like we'll have the ranger stuff that I talked about a little bit earlier. In issue 3 we'll have the rules for the ranger and for the dwarven rangers. And they have specific abilities they have where they can get like animal familiars and stuff like that. And then we also have each issue will have rules, so there'll be like a mini module, a class rules, and then every issue is going to have like a monster manual sort of entry for whatever the monster is they're fighting in that issue. So in the first issue, they fought this big thing they call the Ashvelen, which is sort of a creature that's created by trauma. So it's like a psychic remnant from some sort of horrible event. And in this case, it was the war that destroyed this dwarven city is left over this sort of psychic, like evil energy that's coalesced into this minotaur thing that they fight. In the second issue, well, I don't want to spoil it, but you can tell from the cover when you see the cover that there's zombies. It's like undead. So there's whites in it, but they have special rules. They're not the typical undead. They have different rules to them. So we'll have the rules for that in this issue too. So every issue will have the class, the monster, and the setting with a map and encounters and the whole 9 yards, so you can play through the thing. And then as we go through the story, we're gonna, they'll be built up a library. So I'm planning after issue 6 to do a collection, and by then, we'll have 6 classes, we'll have at least 6 monsters. I think we might have 2 in this issue, so we'll probably have between 6 to 10 monsters, and we'll have 6 mini adventures, and there'll be at that point it'll be probably 70 pages of supplement, just the gaming material plus the comic at that point. So we're going to collect that into a volume. So it's something, Matt's been helping me a lot with it, coming up with how the works in a gaming system. And it's been a lot of fun to do that. So people seem to be liking it. I'm actually, the regular edition of the comic is $10. It's very expensive to print the small, on print on demand quantities that indie creators like me, I would love to be able to do it cheaper, but I can't. But this special RPG edition, it has all the bonus pages, so it costs even more to make. And so I'm doing it as a special limited edition. I'm only printing 200 of each of those. And so because of that, on the Kickstarter is $20. So it's twice as much, but I've actually sell more copies of the RPG edition than the regular one, because people just they love the covers. And the second issue has a cover that's an homage to Keep on the Borderlands, which is actually an inspiration for the story. They literally visit a keep on the Borderlands, so like it's not just the homage cover, but that was my favorite module. It's always been my favorite as a kid. I loved playing Keep on the Borderlands. So um, I think people are really going to dig it. And I've been to a couple conventions since issue one came out, and it's the same thing. People buy more copies of the RPG edition than the regular one, even though it's more expensive, because it was just cooler. you know, it's just cooler.
Hmm. So that's really interesting. It sounds like, so, I mean, I love that. I love that you're not just getting a module. You're not getting just random encounters. There's there's like seeds of world building that you're putting together,
Yeah.
and it's going to be exciting to see at the end when all this is collected, what you build after this and what
Yeah, I
So
mean, one
that's
thing that I want to do, and I don't know if I'm gonna be able to do this because it's something that I haven't done before, so I don't know what the vendors are. But what I really want to do when I get to issue six is, of course, I'm gonna collect it in a trade. Some people already have all the modules, though, right? So what I want to do is actually just make a the red box, just looks like the old D&D, basic set red box, but it'll say Quest on it instead of D&D. And it'll hope maybe even come with like a custom Quest 20-sided die, and then you can get that box to keep the your set of comics inside. So like I want to capture the experience that I had as a kid. Like I just want to sort of bring that all back. And the world building is a big part of that. And hopefully it'll be fun for people. I remember when I was a kid, the Greyhawk campaign setting came out. I think it was in like '84, and I bought it, and it was a lot of money for me as a kid. Like I had to save up my allowance for like weeks and weeks to get it, and then I got it, and there was no module in it. It was a campaign setting, so it had like you know the sigils of the 48 noble houses of Greyhawk, and it had like a compendium of the gods of Greyhawk. It had all the stuff to make your own adventure, but there was no module in it, and it drove me crazy. So what I want to have here is hopefully the best of both worlds. You'll have all the material, but you also have the comic, you have the story, so and the modules. You can, so there's structure to it. But yeah, I mean, hopefully people will have as much fun reading it and playing it as I'm having making it, because it's a lot of fun.
Hmm. And right now it's on Kickstarter. When will be the last day?
November 13 is going to be the last day. As I mentioned, we're going to have more issues next year, but not just the RPG edition, but all of the variant covers, like the Endless Quest. They're all printed in limited quantities. So if you think it's cool and you want to get it, I would suggest, you know, backing it now and getting it now, because I may sell out of them. Like, I still have copies of issue one left, so you can get both. And I do have a pledge level on the current campaign where you can get a set of both the first and second issue RPG editions. And if you get them together, there's a discounted, you save money doing that. But if for instance, if you thought, well, I'll wait, all the other stuff sounds cool, maybe I'll wait till after issue six and get the box set. Um, I may be sold out of them by then, because they are doing very well. So yeah, if you think it's cool, which hopefully you do, I would suggest getting them now, because at some point I'm going to sell out, and when I have a limited print run like this, I'm not going to, we'll have the trade, but if you want the individual ones, I'm not going to print any more copies once they're gone.
Hmm. All right, so November 13th. So again, viewers, I'll put a link in the description below. Thank you everyone for watching. Be safe out there. We'll see you next time.